Okay. Hey, good evening. And my name is Jerry Holliday, and I am welcoming you to Omega Black Writers Series #2. We had another webinar on November 11th with 5 distinguished writers. We're very pleased to again bring you some outstanding writers who will talk today and provide you with information on their process of writing their books and how they actually negotiated and got through the process of getting their books published. You will be able to ask any questions in our chat. We will have about an hour presentation where the different writers will answer questions and then have a Q&A following that. So if you have any questions, please enter those in the chat and we will respond to those. Our goal will be to answer every question that's asked this evening. So let's get started. And we would like to have Dr. Darryl Brown introduce himself and tell you about his inspiration to write his book and a little bit about it. Dr. Brown.
Thank you, brother. I want to first thank you for having this platform for the brotherhood and the community. What couldn't be a better way to demonstrate our second cardinal, which is scholarship. So thank you for your work. I'm brother Dr. Darryl Brown. I'm a 25-year educator that encompassed 10 years of teaching and 15 years of administration. I was an assistant principal and a principal, and now work for the County Office of Education. Part of my work, most recently with COVID, moved into social emotional learning, which is pretty much our self-awareness, our self-regulation, our social awareness, and our relationship management. But as many of you know who may have children in school, the mental health push in schools is big right now. We're leading with that first. And so social emotional learning was that body of research that we were using to support kids as they came back to school. But what we discovered along the way was there was a gap in adult social emotional learning. And in fact, the institution of education, we had jumped past teachers and were servicing kids at a time where during the pandemic, everyone was hurting, everyone was feeling anxiety, everyone was feeling a degree of stress, if you will. And so that was led into my thinking around publishing a book. I wanted to create what I call a primer of the terms, processes, and research to help us best support ourselves through our innate emotional intelligence. So with that, I wrote Thinking About Your Thinking, and very proud of the work. And again, it was meant as a primer for all of us to have a resource to continue our ongoing relationship, if you will, with our mental health. And also to go back, the pages are purposely written kind of large so you can write notes and different things in there. So again, the core focus was for it to be a primer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Brown. And next, we'd like to have him introduce himself and tell you about his inspiration in his book, Dr. Mateen Diop.
Thank you, Brother Jared. And again, I want to also thank you for having having all of us on. This is such a special occasion, and I'm honored to be a part of it. So I'm Dr. Mateen Diop. I'm also a 25-year educator, a 25-plus year educator in the school system here in San Antonio, Texas. I have this is actually my second book. My first book, Inner City Public Schools Still Work, How One Principal's Life is Living Proof. And my most recent book, the book I'm on here talking about now, is called The Making of a Mad Man, How a Former Inner City Principal was shaped to serve through motivation, adversity, and determination. And really, the impetus for this book, I'm a writer by nature. And as a matter of fact, I just kind of retired in June of this year. So I write full time. And the inspiration for me, for whatever reason, I just felt the need to share my story, my journey for the last 25 years as a teacher, as an assistant principal, as an instructional coach, as a principal, as a director, as an executive director in all the schools that I've led, and talk about my personal journey and how my personal journey led me to become an educator and basically try to put some of those same things that I learned growing up, try to instill that in the kids that are coming behind me. I think my story is not really unique, but I think it's unique in the sense that I've led in every school that I attended as a child. I was either a teacher, I was either assistant principal or principal in all the feeder schools that that I went to as a child. And so my experiences that I put in my book are what we did as teachers, as principals, what we did to basically move the needle academically for our students. If you've ever seen the movie Lean on Me, the story of Joe Clark and Eastside High in Patterson, New Jersey, the last school that I led was similar, very similar to that school. And we were able to turn things around literally in 1 year. And by my third year, we completely righted the ship, if you would, and turned that cruiser around. And we were really on our way to doing great things. And then COVID hit. So, but that's my story. That's my inspiration, the making of a madman, how a former inner city principal was shaped to serve through motivation, adversity, and determination.
Outstanding. Thank you for sharing. And now we have Charles Moore, CPA. Tell us about yourself, introduce yourself, and tell us about your book and your inspiration.
Well, thank you. And I'm actually going to be a trifecta. The first three writers were discussing education, and I'm doing it, but I'm doing it from a financial standpoint, right?
Yeah.
I'm a 30-year CPA. I was born in the urban area, and I've owned my CPA firm for almost 30 years. I'm an author, a family man, and I'm a former b-ball player, right? Was raised in Indiana, and Indiana basketball, they just drink it down there, So I went to college and played, and still I hung them up probably about 24 months ago. Now, my
okay.
My inspiration for writing my book is, and it's called The Aftermath of Brown versus Education. Because I see education every day, but I see it from a different lens. I see it how the resources are allocated. And what I've come to realize is in urban areas, the money is in our failure. And more people eat off of that failure. Right. We fuel the pipeline to prison. And I want to explain this, that back in the biblical days, they used to put people in when they had leprosy, they would put them in, they would put them in valleys, right? And so now leprosy is illiteracy. And so instead of putting them in valleys, they put them in prisons, right? So 75% of most of the people in prison are illiterate. That's more of the common denominator. We just happen to have more illiterate people. And one of the reasons they say why was the same reason they brought Black folks over on slave ships, cheap labor, right? If you're uneducated, you become cheap labor. And that's what fuels the American dream. Now, I also discuss in the book how to increase compensation. And that was to get educators more money, but to concentrate the increase in wages on the educators that produce. And I created a formula that can do that. So my book compares teachers, parents, administrators, boards from the time of 1954 when we enacted Brown versus Education to 2020, and it compares and contrasts where we are and did it actually work. And so that's a little bit about myself and my book.
Okay, thank you, Charles Moore, CPA. And now we'd like to bring to you to introduce himself and tell you about his inspiration and his book, Charles Clark. Charles?
Well, thank you, Brother Holiday, for having me on the show and be amongst these prestige authors. My name is Charles Clark. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. To tell you a little bit about myself, I have 15 years plus law enforcement. Now, before I became a candidate in the field of law enforcement, I was an athlete. And living in the city of Cleveland, neighborhood south side of Cleveland, things were not that much of an opportunity for a lot of youth Black males. You either playing sports or you was in the streets. So at that time, I indulged myself in a lot of activities of sports, football, running track, dibble dabble a little basketball, but football was my love. And it was football that allowed me to transition from public schools into a private Catholic high school, which also gave me the opportunity to play football and obtain a college scholarship to Ohio University. Now, concluding my education, my athletic career ended. And at the time, being a young graduate from Ohio University, I was trying to find myself in a way of life. Graduated with a degree of telecommunication. There wasn't that many opportunities knocking at my door for that particular degree. And at that point, I had an elder cousin who was already with the Department of Cleveland Police. And he kind of nudged me to go on and be part of Cleveland Police Department. At the time, I had no desire to be a cop at all. Being a young Black male and coming from a Black family, police wasn't really our thing. But with no jobs knocking at the door at that time, I took a dibble and dabbled and became a law enforcement officer. And from there, my career, it just expounded. I would work with CPD, I was in the uniform division for like a year and a half before they brought me over to being a narcotics detective. And from there, my career just shot up. And working with CPD, Cleveland Police Department, and then later with on a federal agency, Secret Service on the Organized Crime Task Force, I later experienced different assignments, which led me to later write this book, My Brother's Shield. My Brother's Shield is based off true events that happened in my career as an undercover officer. And I tell you, there were some times where I didn't think I was gonna live to see the next day. I thank God that He watched over me, gave me the blessings of His grace, and I'm here to even tell you about this, and we write the book on my life as an undercover officer. With that being said, my book opens a lot to the viewers who will read them. A lot of things transpired in Cleveland. A lot of things transpired in the state of Ohio. And I wrote about these things in a fictional form using the true events. So it kind of like educates those residents of Ohio, Cleveland, and bordering residents of different states of how law enforcement transition and work through the communities. Cleveland PD, I can speak for, had one thing you call demographic policing, meaning the officer of your neighborhood look like you. So if you live in a Black neighborhood, 85 to almost 90% of the officers that came to your door for call or service look like you. And as things changed, the whole concept of policing changed. And I say to this day, without knowing the education of your state laws, it puts you in jeopardy. And by me telling the story about my life in an entertainment forms, it opens the eyes to have individuals to learn more about the laws of the state they live in or the city they live in. So this is pretty much my inspiration of writing the book, My Brother's Shield.
Okay, appreciate you sharing that. And let's follow up with you on, let's have you discuss your process. What is the methodology that you put in place in writing your book to get it completed? And how long did it take you to complete your book?
Well, I started writing the book January of 2019, and I say about 12 months it took to complete the writing aspect of it. Once I was done writing it, I then sent it off to the publishing company, who later took another 3 months to process it all before publishing it June 16th of 2020. The methodology of writing, I basically took different events and I based them on different chapters in my book. And from the name of the chapter that I started with, I created the story within that chapter. Characters I used were, some was fictitious, but the main characters were real life individuals that worked alongside with me.
Okay. Now, in terms of your book changing names to protect the innocent, so to speak, did you have an occasion to talk with your colleagues while you were writing the book, just to make sure that you weren't doing anything that was out of bounds or that would create issues? Did you get their buy-in and acceptance?
Well, my colleagues, especially the team I work with particularly, we was more like family. So we to this day, we still talk. And at the time I was writing a book, I bounced different ideas off of them. And I said, well, what do you think about me speaking about this incident versus that incident? And they gave me complete guidance to where it wouldn't come back to be a slap in the face on the agency or myself, or make a spectacle of my book while I was out there in the community. So
Okay.
I had full support of every party that I work with in writing the book.
Okay. I just wanted to cover that for people that might have experiences, real life, that they want to talk about, to give them some insights of how they might handle that, so they can be able to freely expand on their ideas without, ruffling any feathers. So let's move to Charles Morris, CPA. Tell us about how long did it take you to write your book, and what was your process to get your book written and completed?
Yeah, so it took me about 4 years. I mean, and because I have like everybody else, I have a pretty large workload, and I had never written a book. And so it was a lot of stops and starts. And then about 2 years ago, a good friend of mine passed away. So I wrote out pretty much the whole book, and then I sent it off to a writer. I mean, it was a ghostwriter, but really they were an editor. And from that period of time, it took basically a summer. Last summer, she did all the editing. And then I had talked to about 4 publishers, and they would call me on occasion. And so once I finished it and we finished the manuscript, I sent it to the publishing house. And I said it was like a Thursday or Friday, and they came back on Monday and said, we'd like to publish a book. And so I went ahead with Page Publishing, and the rest is history. And then the book actually came out this year, a year later, because once you go to a publishing house, then they assign you an editor to get you to the final over the hump. So they go through page by page, and you have a author's portal that you go back and forth. Then they deal with the cover and the preface and all of those types of things. So it took a while. So we got it all finished, and it was published on my birthday, July the 12th of 21. So that was pretty much my journey.
Okay. Now, so you mentioned, sorry to hear about the passing of your friend, but you said that was the emphasis for you to actually go and finish it and get it completed. That situation, realizing that, time is not always on our side.
Yeah, and I wanted this book to come out to have an impact on poor kids' lives, and I get to see education from a spirit that very few African Americans, from the finances, right? Okay. And so it's like a friend of mine say, it's not sometime about the money, it's always about the money, right? And so I want to be able to give my vision of education through the finances and how we reallocate resources to better stimulate education in urban communities. And so that was my impetus behind it. And then as Bruce passed away, I said, that could be me, right? I mean, we were about the same age. And I said, so, and so I said, let me go ahead and finish this. And so that's what I did.
Okay, outstanding. Dr. Mateen Diop, share with us how long it took for you to get your book written from start to finish, and what is your process that works for you that you can share and might be able to be used by some of the people who are watching.
Yeah, so my process, it took me, I would say 12 months, a solid 12 months, about a solid 12 months. And so for me, I would just sit down every day and write. I treated it like a job. So we were in COVID protocol. So there were no kids in school. So it was really just us. So I really just sat in the office all day writing. There was really nothing else to do. So I always had this book in my mind. And so things being what they were at the time in my personal life, I always say the process of writing is very cathartic. So I'm able to just kind of release a lot of things that are in my mind and just put them on paper. So I started probably in August of 2020 and just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and went back and wrote and published in June 2021. Really February, but I had the book signed in June. So February 2021, it was done. But during the process of me writing and I had a phenomenal editor that really worked with me just nonstop. So I think I shared this with you before, that I would be hard pressed to find an error in this book. So if you find one, don't tell me about it. But it was when I finally finished the writing part and the cover design and the acknowledgments and everything that went along with writing. I'm proud of it because I did it all myself. I'm 100% self-published from cover to cover. Everything in the book I did. So I also started a publishing company because I just wanted control of the entire process. And so
We're gonna cover that portion.
Okay.
A little more detail very shortly. We just want to give people insights into your writing and what worked for you in terms of getting it done, because most people struggle with how do I get started in writing?
Yeah.
So if you can kind of elaborate any further on that. But our next question, we're going to ask you exactly that about the publishing process. Okay.
Got you. And I always, because people ask me all the time, well, how do I publish a book? And I say, just start writing. Don't worry about syntax and grammar. Just write. As a school leader, as an educator, I always tell students when they're doing writing prompts, just write. Don't worry about what it sounds like. You're the only one that's gonna see it. So just write it and just write. And pretty soon when you write it, it'll start making sense to you when you actually start reading your manuscript. Then you'll say, oh, you know what, this is chapter 1. Oh, you know what, this will be a good acknowledgement. You know what, I'm gonna put this in chapter 2. But if you worry about the syntax and the grammar, it's just gonna slow you up. So I mean, just write and just start typing away. You take a mental break, go outside, meditate, do what you have to do to get away from it. I always say to let it cool off and then come back to it. But the first thing, my biggest advice to would-be writers is to start writing. That's the hardest part. Just start writing. Don't worry about cover design and all that. Just start writing. That process worked for me. And before I knew it, I had 3 sections and 15 chapters.
Oh, outstanding. Okay. Now let's move to Dr. Darryl Brown. Tell us about, how long it took you to get your book written and your process or method that worked for you that you think others can use. So if you'll share that with us.
Absolutely. Before I do that, I can't wait to read you guys' books. They sound outstanding. My process is traditional. I started with an outline, and that outline grew. And I pretty much use the same format that I use for my dissertation and actually my teaching credential. Again, just starting with the outline and working through research, I felt the need that I needed to see the research and I needed to be able to stand back and look at it. So I use butcher paper on my walls, the huge Post-it pads, and just have concepts up there that I can look back and marinate and move things around, literally plastering every single wall that I can, and condensing that down into the outline and growing the outline and growing subtopics and so forth. As to actually writing, obviously use Microsoft Word. But again, when you're reading some research and things, it was too slow. I felt that, I had more thoughts in my head that I can get out of my pen. So I used Google Voice and dictated a lot of things that I was coming across in the research. Like Brother Diop said, just get it out. Google Voice sometimes will mess your words up a little bit. You'll have to go back and edit them. I also used an app called Rev, which is a dictation app, so I could actually talk to myself and hear my own thinking a little bit, hear it play back to me. Had a small group of people that understood the research that I was able to bounce ideas to, because my task was to take this kind of very dense research and put it in common language where people would understand, and actually be able to own the language, not just read the book, because we want the skills and the terms that are in a book around mental health to be something that you take with you, that enhance what you're doing. But in terms of the writing, that was my process, from outline to butcher paper to dictation into Google Voice, and then the editing process. It was thoroughly enjoyed it. Took me about a year and a half. Took me about a year and a half to get it all done. So
you still have that butcher paper?
You know what I do, actually, I do have some big posts right here, but I kept it, just it was research. So I can put that same stuff back up and talk about the whatever particular motto it was. My drawing's a little bit better now, so probably a little easier for somebody else to read.
Oh, outstanding. Now let's come back with the next question. And this is a question that I'm sure a lot of people who are watching are very interested in. Getting the book written seems to be it's actually the first step, or just the concept, and plowing through either in 6 months or a year and a half. Or I remember from the first group of writers we had, one writer said it took him 6 years, but it was a start, finish. And then the pandemic kind of put people in the place where they had time and allowed him to finish his book. So let's talk about your journey of finding a publisher, and what that process was for you. And if you can, tell us any kinds of expenses that you incur, because typically at some point in time, there are going to be expenses for all of you as writers. Share with us what those expenses were, and do you recommend the way that you got your book published, or knowing what you know now, do it a little differently?
I think I heard Brother Diop say that he wanted to have control of the process from beginning to end, and from cover to cover he wrote. The same situation with me. I didn't pursue publishers right off. I independently published through Amazon. Again, this was a labor of love, from taking the research that I was using at my work and bringing it into my life and hopefully sharing with other people. And so it was very personal to me, and I just didn't go the publishing route. I felt that independent publishing through Amazon, specifically Amazon KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, was very, very user friendly. I will say this though, in terms of we're talking about writing, publishing is a different piece. Even if you do independently publish, there's softwares that you're going to need to learn. There's different things that you're going to need to migrate. So it's a completely different hat that you would need to put on. And so through Amazon KDP, I was able to upload my drafts. One of the good things about Amazon is that it's drop shipped. So they literally bind the entire book to you. They send you proofs. You can order author copies, I should say, for $2 a copy. And so I could literally get my book in my hand, look at it, see what it's going to look like, flip through the pages, and without it being published to the public. And then I could pull that draft down if I saw any corrections and re-upload it. For my cover, I reached out on the website called Fiverr, and contracted with a gentleman actually in India. In Fiverr, when you go on there, there's gig jobs, all for basically anything. But he was able to talk me through what a good cover would look like. I told him I just wanted it to be simple and kind of clean, and was very happy what he came back with for a pretty good price. So once I got the cover and once I was finished the draft, logged into my KDP account, uploaded both the cover and the draft, and Amazon drop ships and sends out for me. So independent publishing is a route that I would probably go through, not knocking publishers by any stretch of the imagination. I shouldn't say I would go through. If a publisher wanted to pick up my book, more than happy. But for me, in terms of getting from writing to actually getting a finished product, it was the cleanest, easiest path. In terms of cost, the total cost, I remember we talked about this before, and I actually had forgot about my website that was included in there. So it took me about $1,000 total from the outline process, if you will, to actually getting a book in my hand from Amazon.
Okay, okay. It sounds extremely reasonable, but sounds like you put yourself in the position to be very efficient in your process. Okay, let's move to Dr. Mateen Diop. Now, you were talking about your self-published, so let's have you expand on that. Tell us about your process and how you got to the point of understanding self-published, because we have people who are watching who probably don't understand that. How does that work? If you will share that with us.
Oh, yes, sir. So when I wrote my first book back in 2012, I used they call it self-publishing, but it really is it was called Author House. And they do all the publishing for you. So it's really more independent publishing there. I would call that a self-publishing process. You pay Author House gobs of money to get your book out. And back then I thought about that. And I said, I didn't want to incur those same expenses. I mean, I'm talking $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 back then. And so when I wrote this book, I said, I think I've learned enough where I can do this myself. I'm okay with web design and graphic design. Let me see if I can do this myself. So it really started for me as a question. Could I do this? And so again, I had a friend who was helping me with the edits, and we got together and started putting book covers together in Adobe InDesign, like Dr. Brown said. We use these different softwares. I also use Fiverr. So you start it's a trial and error thing. And for me, it always came back to, I think I can do this myself. So when it came to designing the cover, doing a photo shoot, I did all that myself in my office with a camera and in well lighting. I don't have the lighting with me now, I'm sorry, but I had lights and cameras and all that stuff. So I literally did everything myself. The color design and making sure the color pops and all that. So when the book was about to be finished, I said, well, how am I going to get this out here? And then it just hit me. Say, you know what? I can start my own publishing company. Master P did it. Why can't I do it? So I started a company called the Al Haven Group Publishing. And it's a good friend of mine that I grew up with, who I wrote about in the book. His name is Dr. Kai Dupuy. We grew up on a street in San Antonio, Texas, called Al Haven Street. It was a neighborhood hood, if you want to call it that. And so we said, well, let's name the publishing company after the street we grew up on. So that's what we did. I got a legal business established, and we put the book out and published it. And I have 5 other authors that are published under me as well. And if I could touch on, Brother Jerry, the audio book process, if you want me to touch on that, I can.
Okay, feel free. Yes, sir.
So when I finished writing the book, it was up, it's out. I used KDP and I did everything Brother Brown mentioned. I did all of those things. Then I said to myself, you know what? I've never done an audio book. That's one component I had never done. So let me try to do an audio book. So again, it's COVID, so you can't go anywhere. So same thing. I was in my home office and I tried all these microphones out and I started reading my manuscript to myself, just reading it and recording it and using Adobe Premiere software, listening to myself. And one thing I have to say about the audiobook, and I would encourage all the brothers to do an audiobook, is you get to add a component of your book that you can't put in words writing. Because when you do an audiobook, now your audience can hear you. They can feel your intensity. They can feel what brother was going through with the FBI and the agencies that he worked with, because they're hearing it coming out of his voice. You can add different sounds. I put my daughter's sound in there saying, thank you, daddy, love you, daddy. I put my best friends in there. I put sounds and different things in there that you can do that you can't do when you write it. So the audio portion of it cost me less than $500. Really more like maybe a couple hundred, and that was just the price of the microphone. Because once you get all of your audio files done, and it's not one big file, it's 15 files, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. They're all individual files that you upload to Amazon. It's called ACX. You upload to Amazon. Amazon does all the rendering, puts all the sound in it. Next thing you know, you have an audiobook. And the beauty about Amazon is they come up with your price for your audiobook. You can't determine your price for an audiobook. Amazon determines how much your book costs based on how long it is. So if your book is over 3 hours, it's a certain price. And if your book is under 2 hours, Amazon won't even take it. So if you listen to somebody's audiobook and you hear a lot of fluff in there, that's just the author just putting stuff in there to increase the time, which jacks up the price of the audiobook. So I got to say, for my process, the audiobook was a whole lot of fun. I would really encourage all the brothers to try to do an audiobook. That was a lot of fun.
And how long is your audiobook? How long is the book?
3 hours
In
and
terms of the
48
audiobook?
minutes. Yes, sir. My audiobook is 3 hours and 48 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. But you're going to spend about 50 hours.
That's half a work day. Okay, that was my next question. Now, let me ask you this. You mentioned your process of writing your first book was very different from your second book here. So give us an idea of what your first book costs out of pocket and how much, compare that to what your second book cost.
My first book, I would say roughly $5,500. Roughly.
Okay.
Probably
Okay.
more than that. My second
Okay.
book, $1,650. I can tell you that right off the top of my head, because that's how much,
Okay.
and that really wasn't a price. That was just me feeling bad because my editor was just kind of working for free. We were just kind of working together. And I said, I'll take you to lunch. I'll do these kinds of things. I'll help you with some endeavor. I think I bought a gift for her kids or something like that. So there really wasn't any hard cost. That was just me saying, thanking you for helping me. So I'm giving you $100 here, $200 there. So it came out to $1,650. And I must say that was the best money I've ever spent.
Well, I will make this point. Everyone doesn't have access to a professional person who's willing to work for free. So, so they need to keep in mind that they will have to pay someone. Okay,
Yeah.
let's move on. Charles Moore, CPA. Let's talk about your journey from finding a publisher and negotiating that process and your cost, and would you do it again that same way for your next publication?
Yeah, so mine, I'm a writer, but like a lot of the writers are educators, so grammatical issues and stuff like that comes kind of natural to them, right? Because that's part of their training. Mine is more about numbers and balance sheets and that. So mine is, and it takes me longer to write, right? It just, just because it's just really not my profession. So I said, I'm gonna do it commercially, right? So I spent about $8,000 and I did a lot of writing.
Okay.
But I did all the writing and then I went and got an editor. And, the first thing that I struggled with was actually getting my thoughts in a manner that's readable, that, so I didn't do the outline probably for the first couple of years. And then when I went back and did the outline, it went pretty fast. But so I spent the money to get an editor. Then I spent the money to get a publisher. And then I also hired a publicist, which is a person that basically creates an image for you, right? And we talked about this the other day. I'm also looking for an agent. So the agent is the person that sells you and get a commission for. The publicist is the one that build up your name ID, right? Because, my thought is, like I said, I think we sold around 2,000 books. And so what I wanted to do is, I had grandeur about, selling hundreds of thousands of books. So I figured that I wanted to deal with people that had did it before, right? So I didn't want to go through and do all of those things. Because one, I didn't have time and I didn't have the expertise. So I had the cover written about 4 years ago. The young lady, La Rosa Johnson, did the cover and we went back and forth on that. So I had the cover a long time ago, But that was kind of my journey. I actually got all but the actual writing. I basically paid for everything else. I mean, because I just didn't have the time. In my mind, I had more money than I had the time. And so I figured that if I go ahead and just do it probably the pricier way, that with people now, would I do it different? It probably would take me less time because I understand the process now. So some of the things that I could take out, I wouldn't have to go through as many times while I'm writing. Now I understand how to write the outline, what the flow would be, what my editors would be looking for, what the publisher would be looking for. So I think I could do it in a lot quicker time now.
Okay, great, outstanding. Thanks for sharing. And let's move on. Charles Clark, tell us about your interaction in terms of finding the publisher, negotiating that process, and your out-of-pocket costs, and would you do it the same way? Well, actually, you're working on the second book, so you can tell us if you're using the same personnel and contacts. So, okay, share that with us.
Yes, I am working on the second book. Just completed the sequel to My Brother's Shield. Basically, the process, the avenue I took was I had 5 different publishing companies I sought after. And before doing so, I conferred with different people that have written books or known people who wrote books and got their insight. And from those individuals, how I came up with the 5 different publishing companies. After conferring or doing research on these companies, I decided to go with Triad Press, who's currently my publisher now. And satisfied, and we'll continue to use the same publishing company. And the reason being because the publisher who runs this company is very personal. I feel that we have a loyal relationship. At any time, I can give her a call if I have an idea or something about my book's detail. She will either text me back or call me right away. I mean, she could be in a different time zone somewhere in another part of the country. She'll still get in contact in some shape, way, or form. And we just have this continuity of being able to communicate on a level of not just business colleagues, but friends as well. And her publishing company is a dual company. Well, she helped authors as well as produce film. And my goal is to make these 2 books that I've completed into a movie. As I said before, it's a sequel to the first book. A lot of action in it, it's riveting, and it's based off true events. And as far as the cost you mentioned, Jerry, I didn't spend much. I spent more money on an editor than I would anything else as far as advertising, because I believe in the marketing of word of mouth. You have a good flow of followers or friends or anyone in your realm of workforce or just hanging out, talking to them about your book will get your book around. And that was proven like the first month. My book was published in June of 20. The first month I sold anywhere to 5, almost 600 copies. And I hadn't even did that much of advertising. Okay. I didn't start doing more advertising to the following months.
Okay. Well, you mentioned your cost for your editor. How did you identify that editor, and what was the cost for you engaging them to work on your project?
Well, I had a buddy that was working on his doctorate thesis, and he had used his one particular editor before to go through his thesis. He was preparing for his graduation. So he turned me on to that person, and through trust and confidence, that person reviewed my book and went on from there.
But I mean, what did they typically charge you?
I was paying anywhere from $1.50 to $2 a page.
Oh, really? Okay,
and
that's not bad at all.
And I don't know if that's a discount or that was just a person just looking out for me.
Well, that's one common thing I noticed in discussion with all of you guys. Everyone does have friends that they lean on to help in the process. So
Yeah,
if you're watching and you're interested in this process, get you some friends that got talent that can help you, because obviously it saves you money and does help improve your final project. Last question. You
yeah,
mentioned talking with
it's
people about maybe a movie. So who would
right.
play you?
It's funny we talked about this before. I say Michael B. Jordan, because back in my day of my early years of law enforcement, I was a reckon to be met with, a force to be reckoned with. So I think he has that build, that tenacity, that demeanor to play my character in this book series.
You got the swagger, okay. All right. We'll look for that release here in the next couple of years. All right. And I do have the next question, but before we go to that next question, and I'm going to come back to you, Charles Clark, with this question, I want to let everyone know that a lot of things have been stated and mentioned. Very valuable information has been provided by all our writers. And I know maybe you didn't get everything, or you didn't have an opportunity to write it all down. If you register, we will be sending you out. First of all, you'll get a link to watch this program again, but also we'll send you a contact sheet that you can reach out to each of these writers and ask them questions if you're interested in having them come to your organization for a book signing, or even come in if you're looking for speakers. All these gentlemen, each and every one of them is a subject matter expert. And as you can see, bright, articulate, who would represent your organization well as speakers. So they are not being compensated for this evening. Let me just say that. They, nor I, are being compensated for this evening. So if you can keep them in mind in the future. And also, all their books, I saw that question in the chat, all their books can be purchased on Amazon. And if for some reason you cannot find their book on Amazon, you'll have their contact information to reach out to each and every one of them. So, and we're going to have them tell you all the other locations that you can purchase their book with this next question. So just wanted to get that out there. You can go out there and purchase their book right now, tonight, and just think that you're supporting these gentlemen who have put in their intellectual and mental and physical sweat and tears into these projects, and now they're sharing their experiences this evening with you. So with that, Charles Clark, tell us why everyone viewing should have your book in their library, on their bookshelf.
My book is full of entertainment, and not just entertainment, it's educational. It's an intellectual piece that opens the mind to law enforcement. Again, keep in mind, it's fictional, but each chapter in my book was based off true events. So those events that I'm sharing in the book was actual things that transpired, that some people were blind to how police officers or undercover agents work. When most people think of police, they think of the guy showing up in a uniform. That's not always the case. You have different levels, different units that work together to investigate a crime or bring safety or some closure to a crime or incident that happened to you, for the public and the public safety. So not only is entertainment and a story that's truly told, but it's educational and intellectual for a person to learn from. And that's why I believe this book should be an item in your library of choice.
Okay, and where can they purchase your book?
My book can be purchased on 3 different platforms, Amazon being one, Barnes & Noble the other, and Walmart online.
Okay, and again, for those who might have been late in joining us, the name of your book.
My book is titled My Brother's Shield. And the sequel
Okay.
that'll soon be out will be My Brother's Shield, Book 2, Shielding Pam. And the
Okay.
reason I put this Shielding Pam there is it's the cliffhanger for 1, for those who already read it.
Okay, I get you. Yeah, we can talk about that Pam later, but okay. Okay. All right. Charles, Brother Charles Moore, tell everyone why your book should be on their bookshelves or in their personal libraries, and also let them know where they can purchase your book.
All right, yeah. So the reason you want to read my book is primarily if you wonder why we can put a astronaut on the moon, but we can't teach a poor kid how to read, right? If you really, or if you an educator and you want to have a different view of allocating resources at your school or your how do you make this work? If you care about poor children education, also, and I provide the solution, right? There's a lot of books that talk about, why and how, and it's entertaining to actually go back to 1954 and see what education looked like then. And, I talked to my mother-in-law and my mother and my aunt, what did it look like in rural Alabama at the night? And then I know what it looks like now. To compare all the characters during that period of time, I think it'll be eye-opening for people. And understand, my tagline is, the money is in failure. I mean, and the money is in our failure. It is education, K through 12, is the largest business in the world. And it's a lot of people get fed off our kids' failure. Now you can pick my book up at Barnes and Noble. You can pick it up at Amazon. But when you go into Amazon, there's a million aftermaths. You just put Charles L. Moore, CPA, and it pops up. I mean, I only got one book, so when you put that name in there, it pops up, and that's the easiest way to find it. And it's a good read, and it's only like 140 some pages or so of actual reading, and so it's something that you could just read in a day or two and get to the conclusion. I think you'll just love it. I do.
Okay, all right, very good. And Brother Mateen Diop, why should your book be on everybody's shelf and in their library? And where can your book be purchased?
I really have to lamb back on what Brother Moore said. My first book that I wrote, Inner City Public Schools Still Work, How One Principal's Life is Living Proof. If I had titled my second book something similar, it would have said something, it would have read something like Inner City Public Schools Can Still Work, because what I learned from 2012 to 2022 is exactly what Brother Moore just said. If you care, and I'm going to almost say what he said verbatim, if you care anything about our nation's schools, you should read my book, because I was very candid about what I saw as a school leader and a district leader from 2012 to 2021, 2022. So when I wrote my first book, I was an elementary principal. I had just finished 6 years as an elementary principal. And at the elementary level, everything is roses and everything is, you hug the babies. But when you get to high school, it's a whole different world. And I had no idea until I got there. That's why I said the whole Joe Clark thing. So I wrote about that. So when he said people are getting fed off the backs of our children, I saw that firsthand. I couldn't believe it. I said, wait a minute, I thought that we want kids to. So I wrote about why I'm no longer there. And it was all done strategically. So if you care about our nation's public schools, inner city schools, you should get a copy of my book. my tagline, motivation, adversity, and determination, when I talk about the things that happened to me in my personal life, my personal struggles, and how those struggles translated into the pages of my book, I think you should read my book. It should be on your shelf, because if you're going through anything in your life, I don't care what struggle you're encountering in your life, there's a solution. If you have that social, emotional things that we go through as Black men, especially in education, pick up my book, because I was very honest about the things I went through and how I was able to get over them. That's the motivation part, the adversity, everything I had to deal with, and the determination to get out of it. But I put it in a story format for schools. So if you care about inner city schools, that's why my book should be on your shelf. You can pick up the Kindle version of my book and the audiobook version on Amazon.com. Just type in my name, Mateen Diop. If you want a paper copy or a hard copy, because I have both, paper and a hard copy, go to my website, drmateendiop.com. And I didn't put those on Amazon because, like I said earlier, Amazon takes a lot of your profit from you, and I wanted to be in control of the process. So I have my own printer and everything. So if you go to drmateendiop.com, you place the order on my website, I can sign it for you, autograph it, send it to you, and I get it to you right away. So drmateendiop.com for the paper copy and the hard copy. Go to Amazon for the Kindle version and the audiobook.
All right. Thank you for sharing. And Dr. Darryl Brown, tell us why your book should be in our libraries and on our bookshelves, and where can we get your book?
Well, talk about some hard acts to follow. Great job, brothers. Great job. Really interested in reading your work. Why should my book be on people's bookshelves? Well, when we think about mental health, we think a lot about therapists. We think a lot about what we think about, frankly. We rarely think about our body. Daniel Goleman, who is the author of Emotional Intelligence, states that in reality, we have two minds, one that thinks and one that feels. And we really don't know a lot about our body that feels. COVID taught us a lot about our body when we were in quarantine, that we wanted to get out. You know, it wasn't our mind saying it, our mind wanted to, but our bodies, literally, you felt visceral feelings like, I need to go walk. I need to get out. I need to do something. It's, you know, why people are running back in the restaurant. So what my book does, particularly in chapter 3, is it talks about the research around our bodies, particularly a theory called polyvagal theory. And again, what I've tried to do is take what can be very dense research and put it in a very user-friendly reader voice to digest some of the topics. But in essence, it is an emotional highway between our brains and our bodies. Gut feelings are real. You know, our instincts are very real. The stress and when we're locked in places of trauma are very real. And a lot of times talk-based therapies, while can be effective, sometimes don't move us off our feelings. You know, if we could think our way to feeling better, wouldn't it be a lot easier to control our mental health? And so what my book does, again, it gives us a primer of the terms and topics, and particularly the research that supports us in managing our emotional intelligence, or should say managing our mental health through our emotional intelligence. You can find my book at my website, which is thinkingaboutyourthinking.info. That's thinkingaboutyourthinking.info. And the link is to Amazon is there. There's also some videos that support the research that was used to write the book. So I'd encourage you to log on and take a look at some of the videos, even before you may read the book. It'll certainly kind of give you a primer, if you will, to it. So again, just want to write something that everyone could have, refer to a quick reference. A lot of times we watch videos or we may talk to people, but bound in my pages are, again, the terms right at your fingertips. So I encourage you to have a look. Again, thinkingaboutyourthinking.info.
Outstanding. Brothers, unfortunately, we have reached the end of our program. I want to commend and just let you know how pleased I am, and a number of other people, from the comments with your sharing, your discussion. And before we go into Q&A, I do want to do a couple of obligatory kinds of recognitions. First of all, I want to recognize Donovan Bell, who is our IT guru, who keeps us running up and going. He has coordinated, he's put up the charts. this project came together about 90 to 120 days ago. And the thing that we were missing was we knew that we did not have the technical expertise for the vision. So I was able to subtly convince Donovan. There wasn't a whole lot of leaning on him, but we did lean a little bit. He was nice enough. But I do want everyone to know that Donovan Bell has been a great part of this event. I also want to recognize the Kappa Xi chapter of Omega Psi Phi. If anyone out there was not aware, we are all members of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. We thought it was important that we provide an additional look into our second cardinal principle of scholarship by highlighting and bringing to the public some of our great minds that are doing great work that we wanted to highlight and support and let you know this is the kind of individual talent that we have within this organization. I am a member of the Kappa Xi chapter, but I want to recognize them for stepping up and supporting this vision and this event. Specifically, the immediate past bossless, Mr. Jamon Kearney, Brother Jamon Kearney, and the current bossless, Dr. Andre Denson. We want to thank them for their leadership and their ability to go through the politics that we sometimes have in our organization and see the value of this event. I also want to recognize the 12th district of Omega Psi Phi, which is made up of 11 states, and 3 of us are members of the 12th district. The district is very progressive. In fact, we're known as the massive and progressive, or progressive and massive 12th district, forgive me. But I also want to recognize the leader, Brother Kwame Dow, who is our district representative and is continuing the tradition of excellent leadership within our district. So we're going to move on to questions and answers. Oh, thank you, Kim. We just got one of the members of Delta Sigma Theta who sent us a nice acknowledgement, but we appreciate everyone. We do ask again that you support these gentlemen, not only with purchases of the book, but if you have a program, if you have a scholarship event, if you have an event for speaking to your employees, where you need someone for a convention, they are subject matter experts. And as you heard tonight, they're very good, particularly articulate, and some of them are pretty good looking. So we do want to thank everyone for attending. Now we'll get in. Now, if you have the other thing, I'm going to ask everyone that's attending to put in the chat where you're watching us from. We do want to know where we're reaching. I know some of the people that are online are from the East Coast, so it's a little later there. But please put your information of where you're watching us from. We will be selecting some winners based on you previously being registered who are attending tonight to win copies of these great works that are autographs. So we will be sending those. And Kim, give us a city. California is kind of big, so let us know which city you're in. And what we're going to also do is we're going to look through the list of where people are from, and we have predetermined various cities that we are going to select if you're from that city, where we will select you as a winner to receive a book. So there's another reason behind us asking that. So with that, oh, the chat is just escalated. I see it went from like 7 questions to 40, 50. Okay. All right. Thank you. So nothing like motivating people with a free book from an excellent writer. But let's go ahead and look at some questions here, and we'll address those and get that going. Let's see here. Okay, I got a suggestion here, but okay. Oh, I like this. Brother Mark Jackson suggests that we contact the Grand Marshal, who's the person who's in charge of our national meeting, which is called the Grand Conclave, and the executive director, who I actually know him, to see if we can get a book or two included in the gift bags for the conclave. That would be outstanding. In addition, it's just advertised on the website. Okay. So yeah, we'll follow up on that. And let's see. All right, bear with me here. All right, we have a question from Zion Lampley. He's in Jacksonville, Florida, attending Florida A&M. And let's see, looks like someone responded to him, but we'll give someone else an opportunity to answer that. Let's go with Dr. Diop. Will you? Okay, we talked about this during the evening, but he said, what motivated you to write, and what advice do you have for upcoming book and article writers like himself?
Yes, sir. That's the brother at FAMU. If that's
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir. So the brother at FAMU, I have to. I wish I had done this when I was 20 years old. So the brother at FAMU, I'm going to say he's younger than 30. I'm just going to throw it out there. You're younger than 30 years old. What you put on what you put on pages, what you put out in the world, just think about it. It's going to be going in perpetuity. So young people that are coming behind you, what story do you have to tell? We all have a story. The late great Dr. Miles Monroe said, the richest place in the world is the cemetery. That's where unwritten books go to die. That's where unwritten plays and businesses never started go to die. So as a young brother in college right now, young man, what is it about your life that could possibly impact somebody coming behind you? And what could you tell them? How could you be a bridge builder for these young people coming behind you? I know there's some struggles, there's some hurdles in your life that you have, and it's incumbent upon you to share that. I'm going to say, if you don't, it's on you. Shame on you if you don't share it. That's blood on your hands. Whatever you're going through, your travails going through FAMU, how did you get financial aid? How did you get in the dorm room? How did you pick your roommate? The things you went through, you have to write that down. It doesn't have to be a long book. Write a newsletter, do a blog, but something has to go out there so you can be a testament and a blessing to somebody coming behind you. So just start writing. That's what would be my advice.
Okay, great. And I have another question that was previously answered by Dr. Darryl Brown. So I'll ask this, and Dr. Brown, if you can share your response. What advice do you have for people who want to write a book but have so many ideas swirling around in their head? And if you can just recount your answer for everyone that's watching.
Absolutely. I'll give the answer, but I would also say, do some sitting time and figure out what your purpose is, in terms of writing. And to the person that has many topics, the simplest solution I would say is that force yourself to rank them 1 through 10 or 1 through 5, and then make your decision on the top 2. But at some point you have to force yourself, because you can only write one book at one time. If you got 10 ideas, you might get to 10 books, but you got to write the first one. So yeah, force yourself to rank them and then take the top 2 and make that your decision.
Okay. Now, you also responded to her second question, and we'll allow you to do that again for everyone. What advice do you have for people like her who love to speak but lack the skill and motivation to be a writer? She also shares that she has a learning disability that makes writing difficult.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That was my pain. Even from my dissertation process, just being able to sit and put pen to paper and start writing, I'm easily distracted. So what I found helpful is what I mentioned previously is using dictation instruments like Google Voice, which is very easy. You can say a whole lot. I can talk faster than I can write. And so sometimes, even in educational space, we would use that as a tool to help students who couldn't write as fast, but I know they had it in their head. So get a dictation device or use Google Voice and just get it out. You can transcribe it The app Rev, actually, if you dictate into it, you can send the transcript off and they will type it out for you. So you even have that as a resource. I believe they'll send it back to you in a Word doc, but they will get down what you dictated on paper. You know, that could be 5, 6, 7, 10 pages. There is a cost to it, so you want to watch that. But to leverage the ability, you leverage having to write all the time, wholeheartedly would say Google Voice or some type of dictation. Actually, I'll say Google Voice because it's free and it's easy and it's probably sitting right in front of you on your computer.
Okay. And she says, thank you for practical advice. We have another question, and I'm going to give this to Charles Moore, CPA, because even though I see that Dr. Diop is answering it, but I think he's the perfect example of this situation. For those brothers who are working a full-time job while writing, when do you create the time to write? Where location did you find the most creative, productive place to write? And Charles Moore, CPA, because I know you're extremely busy with your accounting practice. So go ahead and let LF Richardson know what worked for you in this particular question.
Well, one of the places I did most of my writing was at my mother-in-law's house in South Carolina. In fact, when I did my first book signing, I did it at her kitchen table in July. But there was nothing going on there, and the phone was away, and I didn't have a million things going on. So I did my best writing in South Carolina. And then when I was here, I did it on Sunday nights, right? You know, we typically don't, watch the football game or basketball game or whatever. And then Sunday nights is where you're preparing for the next week. And I wrote a lot on those Sundays. I mean, that was kind of the time, after church or whatever. And I didn't have to go to the office, so I could do stuff on the first 6 days and then take Sunday off. But those were the days, and I used it as an outlet, right? I mean, it was something that I did that for me was fun, right? And so those were the days I wrote, was those 2 times right there when it was downtime, when I was like on vacation or away from the house, and then also on Sundays. And because when I came home after work, I couldn't write or could do anything because I'm answering the phone at 1 o'clock in the morning, emails, or texts, and worrying about the checks bounce, whatever, all of that stuff. I couldn't keep that. So I had to have time where my head was clear. And those were 2 times that really I did a lot of writing in.
Okay. Okay, we're getting quite a few good comments and feedback. Let's take a look. I'm just going back through the chat. Okay, Charles Clark, and everyone can respond to this question, but I'll start with Charles Clark. Has a copy of your book been donated to the local library?
No, it has not. Basically, there was a donation that here in Las Vegas called Parents Citywide and the Delta Sigma Thetas. They get together and do charity fundraising. I donated a few books there, but as far as to the local library, I have not.
Maybe this is a suggestion that you should do that. What do you think?
Yeah, I believe so. So
Okay.
That's a good idea to take for it.
Okay, Dr. Diop, are you in your local library?
I am in the local library, and it actually surprised me because I actually gave it to the brother who's the director of the Carver Branch Library in San Antonio. And I thought I was just giving it to him as a me to him, like, brother love brother type thing. And I was surprised. I went into the library one day and I'm in the back and somebody came and said, your book is over there on the shelf. And I even said, what you talking about? What book? So I went over on the shelf and there it was. So the answer to the question is yes, it is in the public library. So yeah.
Okay, outstanding. All right, so we're 1 out of 2. Charles Moore, CPA, is your book in your local library?
No, I don't think so. I mean, that's a great idea. I'm gonna make sure it happens real quick. My concentration was kind of on selling them, not to be funny, but I think that's a good idea. And so the only ones we sent was to editors that critique books. We sent some of those, but I think that's a great idea. I'll make that happen.
Okay, and Dr. Darryl Brown, you in the library, kid?
Looks like we're gonna be 1 for 3 because that's a great suggestion. I'm currently not in the library. I've donated to schools and local school districts, and I live probably a few blocks from the library. So that's a great suggestion. I'll definitely be seeing what that process is. Great suggestion.
Let me also add this to the suggestion. Call the library, let them know, I'm a published author, and my book is blah blah blah, and I can help you, but I think you can do it. And just say, hey, I'd like to donate my book to your library system, but can we also have sale? And you might get, because actually the library, and I'm a proponent of the library. I sometimes go to the library just to not be bothered, but I think the library is a good outlet for readers, and a lot of the libraries are nice buildings that have quite a clientele. And if you can get anything through their system, they usually have, I don't know, 20, 30,000 people on their email list, maybe more than that. If you could get something organized through your library that they can send out to their readers, their members, you guys could do okay. I'm just saying, just a thought.
Brother Jerry, can I throw something in there real quick?
Absolutely, go.
I also sent a copy of my book to Joe Madison, the Black Eagle on Sirius XM. I sent him a copy and he actually read it and called me, and he did an interview with me on Sirius XM. So I'm on there. I sent a copy to Tom Joyner, Brother Joyner. He read it. He sent me a card, a thank you card and all that. I've also sent one to Karen Hunter and everybody on the Sirius XM lineup, including Al Sharpton. None of them have gotten back to me, but it might suggestion just to send out to those radio personalities. We don't have Black radio in San Antonio, but I don't know if you have it in Vegas. But if you have a Black radio in Las Vegas or wherever your cities are, send the program manager a copy of your book. Just send it to them. Never know. If they get you on the radio, you're going to have people all over the world listening to you. Just an idea.
Okay, I just located an additional question, but I think that's a great idea, Dr. Diop. But I think this is a question for Charles Clark. Did you have any dialogue issue between characters? What was the best way to write conversations? Based on the topic of your book, you probably had a lot of that. So how would you answer this specific question?
Basically, I played the characters over in my mind. And from playing their rollover, that's how I developed a line for each character. And to me, it's just like Brother Brown stated before. Once you start writing, you just keep writing. And I made it like when I write, I make it like a movie inside my head. And to have a movie, you gotta have dialogue. So with that dialogue, it's just bouncing back and forth, and living and being part of the character is how I was able to even come up with the concept of what direction I want the book to go in. So I would say reviewing the characters in your head, developing the content, and the dialogue just came easy.
Okay, great. And here is a question for Brother Butcher Block Paper. When beginning a project, would you suggest creating an outline first, or as you progress? Did you all write your books in chronological order, or did some chapters come before others? Oh, and I got a couple other questions. So let's everybody briefly respond to that in terms of did you write your book in chronological order or not? And let's start with Dr. Darryl Brown. And then there's another question here that I found.
You know, to a certain degree, it was in chronological order because the way that the research rolled out, to a certain degree. You know, but at times I would work a little bit in the first section, work a little bit in the third section, work a little bit in the fourth section. But as the book reads, it is kind of an introduction to mental health and talks about some core topics in mental health and gets into the research and then gets into some application. So chronological and sequence in the book, but in terms of actual writing, I jumped around a little bit. I jumped around in my outline a little bit.
Okay. Dr. Diop, how did you do yours in chronological order, or just kind of, I think you mentioned earlier that you wrote stuff and then looked at it and then put it in order, but go ahead and discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I started and I mentioned this before, for whatever reason, and I have no idea why, but for whatever reason, I remember all the way back to my 9th birthday. I remember the sights, I remember the sounds, I remember what I ate, I remember my gifts. So it just made sense for me to start chapter 1 is entitled My 9th Birthday. And then I go into chapter 2, an apology to my sister, and I went on from there. And so the first part of the book, chapters 1 through 5, are probably more personal and things that I went through as a child and going through high school and college. And then I started getting to more of my professional life. But I thought it was important for me to lay the groundwork for my personal life growing up and how everything that happened in my personal life influenced the type of educator I eventually became. So without those early struggles, I don't think I would have been the educator I would have been. So it kind of fell chronologically for me just kind of fell that way unintentionally because that's how I remembered it. So that's how I wrote it.
Okay. Charles Moore, chronological or not? And I think you did mention the benefits of having an outline.
Yeah. So what I did, you know, again, it took me 4 years. So I did a whole lot of writing. And it was 2 years in that I really took heed to one of my friends that said, you need an outline, right? So that I can structure my thoughts, right? Because I had a lot of thoughts down and how do I make this readable and something that people can grasp? And one of the things that I did, because, you know, I'm trying to set myself up to be a literary, right? So I want to have some themes in my book. One of the things that I did was I had the conclusion in the middle of the book. And then I explained how I got to the conclusion and what the solution is, right? And so, because all my books that I want to read would have a solution. Because I think that's the real thing. Because, you know, it's a bunch of people talking about folks' problems, but that doesn't help people. What helps people is to get their mind open on how do we solve this problem, right? So I spent a lot of time. So yeah, I did. I put everything on paper, then I went back. But my journey is a little longer than some of the brothers on here. So I had time to do that.
What I will share with you in the first group, as I mentioned, this is a second series. The previous series, we had 5 other outstanding writers, and one of the writers has you beat. He took 6 years to eventually get his book completed. So so what that is a sign that just because you haven't gotten it done yet doesn't mean you can't get it done if you decide that's what you want to do. And I have another question for you, Brother Moore, but before that, Brother Clark, tell us, did you write your book in a chronological order, or did you just write it and then kind of put it in order? Did you use an outline or not?
To be honest, it wasn't chronologically. It wasn't in any kind of order that I chose. I just went off the storyline of an ambitious detective in a major city that's investigating a big homicide that led to dealing with crime syndicates and corruption. And from that idea, I created chapter after chapter. And within each chapter, I wrote a story. And I built on from there, which led my first book to have a cliffhanger. Now, the sequel to it, I have a little bit more of an outline, but still the same same style of writing.
Okay, all right. Brother Moore, here's a question specifically for you, and I already know the answer. It says, my wife is a special education teacher. Do you think your book would make a good holiday gift?
Absolutely. I think she gets the chance to see what I'm talking about. I want people to understand, if your child is in special education and cannot read in the 3rd grade, the likelihood of them being a prisoner is like 65, 70%. I mean, it's those numbers are crazy. I mean, they are really crazy, because that's why they talk about reading at the 3rd grade level. Is they're tracking these kids through Title I, not to make them better, so that they can build prisons, so that they can build low-income housing. So I mean, all the things that you have that's how they build workforces. You see, but anyway, I'm not gonna go all into that, but I'll be here all night. But yes, it would be a good read. She would love it.
Well, okay, outstanding. I was going to say, go ahead, preach, Brother Moore, preach.
Oh, you want me to preach? I'll preach now.
Okay.
Man, got a
I have a comment here.
Right? But the issue being that you have all of these little kids that don't even we went into the pandemic, and when they take tests, they call them formative tests, which really are just practice tests. And most of them are done in yes or no. So little kids can answer them on their phones. But the final tests are subjective, so you got to type. So kids that don't have access to computers are at a disadvantage just taking the test. Now, even if you knew it, you're at a disadvantage, right? So I talk about how to right size these things. And these are the things that special education teachers banging their heads every day on, trying to get this kid from A to B. And I talk about how to do it. And the key to it is, if the money is in failure, the money also could be in success, right? It's just how you change the allocation. And that's what I deal with. So it'd be a great read.
Okay. All right, brothers, I'm gonna shut us down. It's been fun. But for everyone that's still with us, and we still have a lot of people who are still watching, I want to say to you that if you want to reach out, again, the contact for each of our writers will be sent to you if you register, along with a link to watch this broadcast to not only you, but anyone that missed it who had registered. Now, some people could sign in without registering. We made this totally with no barriers for you to participate. You can reach us on our social media. We have an Instagram and a Facebook page called Omega Black Writers Series. And if you message us there, we will respond and follow up. And second to last thing before we push off today is that if you have any, I just had a moment, but I want to thank everyone, all the participants, in terms of your time and putting up with multiple text messages and occasional phone calls as someone who wanted us to have this kind of outcome. So I'm going to stay in touch, and we hope that this will be beneficial for you as writers and allow you to expand and be even more successful. So we're going to go ahead and call it, and thank everyone who basically was here with us for most. The number of participants never really declined. The number of people that were watching, and I want to thank you for your support for this event. Now I know what I was going to say. What we're going to do is we're going to either go through a quarterly or a 6-month type of presentation for this webinar going forward. We had a very short turnaround from the first to the second because we want, first of all, we had a large number of very talented writers who wanted to participate. And then we wanted to put it out so people could see what we're doing, so they could we could build a little following and build the brand for this particular event. But we're going to go to a quarterly or 6-month event. I'm going to have to talk to our executive board for the local chapter and see if they want to continue to support the event. And just to let you know that all of these writers put in money out of their pocket for the promotion and some of the very nice design work that you see. But thanks everyone for coming. We appreciate it. And feel free to reach out to social media with any comments, questions, or recommendation. We are open to looking at alternative ways to improve this this program. All right. So, all right, guys, I'll be in touch. You're not going to get rid of me that easy. But if anything comes up, you have questions, you know how to get a hold of me. So, all right, everybody, good night and take care.
Thank you, brother Darryl.
Thank you,
brothers.
All right, brothers, was great. All right.
Great.
God bless you.
True.
Rude.
True.